God's knowledge is infallible. There is no mistake in his knowledge. Human knowledge is subject to error. A physician may mistake the cause of a disease, but God's knowledge is unerring. He can neither deceive nor be deceived. He cannot deceive because he is truth, nor can be deceived because he is wisdom. God's knowledge is instantaneous. Our knowledge is successive, one thing after another. We argue from the effect to the cause. God knows things past, present, and to come, uno intuito, at once. They are all before him, in one entire prospect. God's knowledge is retentive. He never loses any of his knowledge. He has reminiscentia as well as intelligentsia. He remembers as well as understands. Many things elapse out of our minds, but God's knowledge is eternized. Things transacted 1,000 years ago are as fresh to him as if they were done but the last minute. He is perfect in knowledge. But is it not said, Genesis chapter 18, verse 21, I will go down and see whether they have done according to the cry which is come up unto me, and I will know? It could not be that God was ignorant, because there is mention made of a cry. But the Lord speaks there after the manner of a judge, who will first examine the cause before he passes the sentence. When he is upon a work of justice, he is not in a riot, as if he did not care where he hits, but he goes straight against offenders. He lays judgment to the line, and righteousness to the plummet. Isaiah chapter 28, verse 17. Hosea chapter 13, verse 12. The iniquity of Ephraim is bound up, his sin is hid. Not that his sin is hid from God, but his sin is hid, that is, it is recorded, it is laid up against a day of reckoning. That this is the meaning is clear by the foregoing words. His iniquity is bound up. As the clerk of the assizes binds up the indictments of malefactors in a bundle, and at the assizes brings out the indictments and reads them in court, so God binds up men's sins in a bundle, and at the day of judgment this bundle shall be opened, and all our sins brought to light before men and angels. God is infinite in knowledge. He cannot but be so, for he who gives being to things must needs have a clear inspection of them. Psalms 94, verse 9. He that planted the ear, shall he not hear? He that formed the eye, shall he not see? He who makes a watch or engine knows all the workmanship in it. God that made the heart knows all its movements. He is full of eyes, like Ezekiel's wheels, and, as Austin says, totus oculus, all eye. It ought to be so, for he is to be judge of all the world. Genesis chapter 18, verse 25. There are so many causes to be brought before him, and so many purposes to be tried, that he must have a perfect knowledge, or he could not do justice. An ordinary judge cannot proceed without a jury. The jury must search the cause and give in the verdict. But God can judge without a jury. He knows all things in and of himself, and needs no witnesses to inform him. A judge judges only matters of fact, but God judges the heart. He not only judges wicked actions, but wicked designs. He sees the treason of the heart and punishes it. Use 1. Is God infinite in knowledge? Is he light, and in him is there no darkness? Then how unlike are they to God who are darkness, and in whom is no light, who are destitute of knowledge, such as the Indians who never heard of God? And are there not many among us who are no better than baptized heathens, who need to seek the first principles of the oracles of God? It is sad that after the sun of the gospel has shined so long in our horizon, to this day the veil should be upon their heart. Such as are enveloped in ignorance cannot give God a reasonable service. Romans chapter 12, verse 1. Ignorance is the nurse of impiety. The schoolmen say, Omne peccatum fundator in ignorantia. Every sin is founded upon ignorance. Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 3. They proceed from evil to evil, and know not me, saith the Lord. Where ignorance reigns in the understanding, lust rages in the affections. Proverbs 19, verse 2. That the mind be without knowledge, it is not good. Such have neither faith nor fear. No faith, for knowledge carries the torch before faith. Psalms 9, verse 10. They that know thy name shall put their trust in thee. A man can no more believe without knowledge than the eye can see without light. He can have no fear of God, for how can they fear him who they do not know? The covering of Haman's face was a sad presage of death. When people's minds are covered with ignorance, it is a covering of the face that is a fatal forerunner of destruction. Use 2. If God be a God of knowledge, then see the folly of hypocrisy. Hypocrites do not virtute miasere, but fingere. Hypocrites do not actually do good, they merely make a show of it. Melanchthon. They carry it fair with men, but care not how bad their hearts are. They live in secret sin. Psalms 73, verse 11. They say, How doth God know? Psalms 10, verse 2. God has forgotten, he hideth his face, he will never see it. But, Psalms 147, verse 5, his understanding is infinite. He has a window to look into men's breasts. He has a key for the heart. He beholds all the sinful workings of men's spirits. As in a glass hive we can see the bees working in their combs. Matthew chapter 6, verse 4. He sees in secret. As a merchant enters debts in his book, so God has his day book, in which he enters every sin. Jeroboam's wife disguised herself, that the prophet should not know her, but he discerned her. 1 Kings chapter 14, verse 6. Why feignest thou thyself to be another? The hypocrite thinks to prevaricate and juggle with God, but God will unmask him. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14. God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 23. They have committed villainy in Israel, even I know, and am a witness, saith the Lord. Aye, but the hypocrite hopes he shall color over his sin and make it look very specious. Absalom masks over his treason with the pretense of a religious vow. Judas dissembles his envy at Christ and covetousness with the pretense of charity to the poor. John chapter 12, verse 5. Jehu makes religion a stirrup to his ambitious design. 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 16. But God sees through these fig leaves. You may see a jade under his gilt trappings. Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 17. Their iniquities are not hid from mine eyes. He that has an eye to see will find a hand to punish. Use 3. Is God so infinite in knowledge? Then we should always feel as under his omniscient eye. Sic vivendum est taquam in conspectu. Hence we ought to live as if always in full view. Seneca. Let us set David's prospect before our eye. Psalm 16, verse 8. I have set the Lord always before me. Seneca counseled Lucilius that whatever he was doing, he should imagine that some of the Roman worthies stood before him, and then he would do nothing dishonorable. The consideration of God's omniscience would be preventive of much sin. The eye of man will restrain from sin, and will not God's eyes much more? Esther chapter 7, verse 8. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me? Will we sin when our judge looks on? Would men speak so vainly if they considered God overheard them? Latimer took heed to every word in his examination, when he heard the pen go behind the hangings. So, what care would persons have of their words if they remembered God heard, and the pen is going on in heaven? Would men go after strange flesh if they believed God was a spectator to their wickedness, and would make them do penance in hell for it? Would they defraud in their dealings and use false weights if they thought God saw them, and for making their weights lighter would make their damnation heavier? Viewing ourselves as under the eye of God's omniscience would cause reverence in the worship of God. God sees the frame and carriage of our hearts when we come before him. How would this call in our straggling thoughts? How would it animate and spirit duty? It would make us put fire to the incense. Acts chapter 26, verse 7. The tribes instantly served God day and night, omnibus veribus, with the utmost zeal and intenseness of spirit. To think God is in this place would add wings to prayer and oil to the flame of our devotion. Use 4. Is God's knowledge infinite? Study sincerity. Be what you seem. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. The Lord looketh upon the heart. Men judge the heart by the actions. God judges the actions by the heart. If the heart be sincere, God will see the faith and bear with the failing. Asa had his blemishes, but his heart was right with God. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 17. God saw his sincerity and pardoned his infirmity. Sincerity in a Christian is like chastity in a wife, which excuses many failings. Sincerity makes our duties acceptable like musk among linen, that perfumes it. As Jehu said to Jehonadab, 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 15, Is thy heart right with me? And he said, It is. If it be, said he, give me thy hand. And he took him up into the chariot. So if God sees our heart is right, that we love him, and design his glory, now, says he, give me your prayers and tears. Now you shall come up with me into the chariot of glory. Sincerity makes our services to be golden, and God will not cast away the gold, though it may want some weight. Is God omniscient, and his eye chiefly upon the heart? Wear the girdle of truth about you, and never leave it off. Use 5. Is God a God of infinite knowledge? Then there is comfort, 1. To the saints in particular, 2. To the church in general. 1. To saints in particular. In case of private devotion, Christian, thou settest hours apart for God. Thy thoughts run upon him as thy treasure. God takes notice of every good thought. Malachi chapter 3, verse 16. He had a book of remembrance written for them that thought upon his name. Thou enterest into thy closet and prayest to thy Father in secret. He hears every sigh and groan. Psalms 38, verse 9. My groaning is not hid from thee. Thou waterest the seed of thy prayer with tears. God bottles every tear. Psalms 56, verse 8. Put thou my tears into thy bottle. When the secrets of all hearts shall be opened, God will make an honorable mention of the zeal and devotion of his people, and he himself will be the herald of their praises. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 5. Then shall every man have praise of God. The infiniteness of God's knowledge is a comfort in case the saints have not a clear knowledge of themselves. They find so much corruption that they judge they have no grace. Genesis chapter 25, verse 22. If it be so, why am I thus? If I have grace, why is my heart so dead and earthly a frame? Oh, remember, God is of infinite knowledge. He can spy grace where thou canst not. He can see grace hid under corruption, as the stars may be hid under a cloud. God can see that holiness in thee, which thou canst not discern in thyself. He can spy the flower of grace in thee, though overtopped with weeds. 1 Kings chapter 14, verse 13. Because there is in him some good thing. God sees some good thing in his people, when they can see no good in themselves, and though they judge themselves, he will give them an absolution. It is comfort in respect of personal injuries. It is the saint's lot to suffer. The head being crowned with thorns, the feet must not tread upon roses. If saints find a real purgatory, it is in this life, but this is their comfort, that God sees what wrong is done to them. The apple of his eye is touched, and is he not sensible of it? Paul was scourged by cruel hands. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 25. Thrice was I beaten with rods, as if you should see a scullion whip the king's son. God beholds it. Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. I know their sorrows. The wicked make wounds in the backs of the saints, and then pour in vinegar, but God writes down their cruelty. Believers are a part of Christ's mystical body, and for every drop of a saint's blood spilt, God puts a drop of wrath in his vial. 2. Comfort to the Church of God in general. If God be a God of knowledge, he sees all the plots of the enemies against Zion and can make them prove abortive. The wicked are subtle. Having borrowed their skill from the old serpent, they dig deep to hide their counsels from God, but he sees them and can easily counterwork them. The dragon is described with 7 heads in Revelations 12, chapter 3, to show how he plots against the church. But God is described with 7 eyes in Zechariah chapter 3, verse 9, to show that he sees all the plots and stratagems of the enemies, and when they deal proudly, he can be above them. Come, says Pharaoh, let us deal wisely. Exodus chapter 1, verse 10. But he never played the fool more than when he thought to deal wisely. Exodus chapter 14, verse 24. In the morning watch the Lord looked to the host of the Egyptians by the pillar of fire, and troubled the host. How may this, like sap in the vine, comfort the church of God in her militant state? The Lord has an eye on all the counsels and combinations of the enemy. He sees them in their train, and can blow them up in their own mine. 5. The eternity of God. The next attribute is, God is eternal. Psalms 90, verse 2. From everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. The schoolmen distinguish between aevon et aeternum to explain the notion of eternity. There is a threefold being. 1. Such as had a beginning and shall have an end, as all sensitive creatures, the beasts, fowls, fishes, which at death are destroyed and return to dust, their being ends with their life. 2. Such as had a beginning, but shall have no end, as angels and the souls of men, which are eternal a parte post. They abide forever. 3. Such as is without beginning and without ending, and that is proper only to God. He is semper existens, from everlasting to everlasting. This is God's title, a jewel of his crown. He is called the King Eternal. 1 Epistle to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 17. Jehovah is a word that properly sets forth God's eternity, a word so dreadful that the Jews trembled to name or read it and used Adonai, Lord, in its place. Jehovah contains in it time past, present, and to come. Revelations chapter 1, verse 8. Which is, and which was, and which is to come, interprets the word Jehovah, which is, he subsists of himself, having a pure and independent being, which was. God only was before time. There is no searching into the records of eternity, which is to come. His kingdom has no end, his crown no successors. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8. Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The doubling of the word ratifies the certainty of it, as the doubling of Pharaoh's dream. I shall prove that God could only be eternal without beginning. Angels could not. They are but creatures, though spirits. They were made, and therefore their beginning may be known, their antiquity may be searched into. If you ask, when were they created? Some think before the world was, but not so. For what was before time was eternal. The first origin of angels reaches no higher than the beginning of the world. It is thought by the learned that the angels were made on the day in which the heavens were made. Job chapter 38, verse 7. When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. St. Jerome, Gregory, and Venerable Bede understood it, that when God laid the foundation stone of the world, the angels, being then created, sang anthems of joy and praise. It is proper to God only to be eternal, without beginning. He is Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. Revelations chapter 1, verse 8. No creature can write itself Alpha that is only a flower in the crown of heaven. Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. I am that I am. That is, he who exists from and to eternity. Use 1. Here is thunder and lightning to the wicked. God is eternal, and therefore the torments of the wicked are eternal. God lives forever, and as long as God lives he will be punishing the damned. This should be as the handwriting upon the wall. It should make our joints to be loosed, etc. Daniel chapter 5, verse 6. The sinner takes liberty to sin. He breaks God's laws, like a wild beast that breaks over the hedge and leaps into forbidden pastures. He sins with greediness, as if he thought he could not sin fast enough. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 19. But remember, one of God's names is eternal, and as long as God is eternal, he has time enough to reckon with all his enemies. To make sinners tremble, let them think of these 3 things. The torments of the damned are without intermission, without mixture, and eternal. 1. Without intermission. Their pains shall be acute and sharp, and no relaxation. The fire shall not be slackened or abated. Revelations chapter 14, verse 11. They have no rest, day nor night, like one that has his joints stretched continually on the rack and has no ease. The wrath of God is compared to a stream of brimstone. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 33. Why to a stream? Because a stream runs without intermission. So God's wrath runs like a stream and pours out without intermission. In the pains of this life, there is some abatement and intermission. The fever abates. After a fit of the stone, the patient has some ease. But the pains of hell are intense and violent, in summo gradu. The damned soul never says, I am now more at ease. 2. Without mixture. Hell is a place of pure justice. In this life, God in anger remembers mercy. He mixes compassion with suffering. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 25. Asher's shoe was of iron, but his foot was dipped in oil. Affliction is the iron shoe, but mercy is mixed with it. The foot is dipped in oil. But the torments of the damned have no mixture. Revelations chapter 14, verse 10. They shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture. No mixture of mercy. How is the cup of wrath said to be full of mixture? Psalms 75, verse 8. For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red. It is full of mixture. And he poureth out of the same, but the dregs thereof, all the wicked of the earth shall wring them out and drink them. Yet in the Revelation it is said to be without mixture. It is full of mixture, that is, it is full of all the ingredients that make it bitter, the worm, the fire, the curse of God. All these are bitter ingredients. It is a cup mixed, yet it is without mixture. There shall be nothing to afford the least comfort, no mixture of mercy, and so without mixture. In the sacrifice of jealousy, Numbers chapter 5, verse 15, no oil was put to it. So, in the torments of the damned, there is no oil of mercy to abate their sufferings. 3. Without cessation, eternal. The pleasures of sin are but for a season, but the torments of the wicked are forever. Sinners have a short feast, but a long reckoning. Origen erroneously thought that after 1,000 years the damned should be released out of their misery, but the worm, the fire, the prison are all eternal. Revelations chapter 14, verse 11. The smoke of their torment ascendeth forever and ever. Poenae gehennalis puniunt, non finiunt. The torments of hell keep on punishing, they never end. Prosper. Eternity is a sea without bottom and banks. After millions of years, there is not 1 minute in eternity wasted, and the damned must be ever burning, but never consuming, always dying, but never dead. Revelations chapter 9, verse 6. They shall seek death, but shall not find it. The fire of hell is such as multitudes of tears will not quench it. Length of time will not finish it. The vial of God's wrath will be always dropping upon a sinner. As long as God is eternal, he lives to be avenged upon the wicked. Oh, eternity, eternity, who can fathom it? Mariners have their plummets to measure the depths of the sea, but what line or plummet shall we use to fathom the depth of eternity? The breath of the Lord kindles the infernal lake, Isaiah chapter 30, verse 33, and where shall we have engines or buckets to quench that fire? O eternity, if all the body of the earth and sea were turned to sand, and all the air up to the starry heaven were nothing but sand, and a little bird should come every 1,000 years, and fetch away in her bill but the 10th part of a grain of all that heap of sand, what numberless years would be spent before that vast heap of sand would be fetched away? Yet if at the end of all that time the sinner might come out of hell, there would be some hope. But that word ever breaks the heart. The smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. What a terror is this to the wicked, enough to put them into a cold sweat, to think, as long as God is eternal, he lives forever to be avenged upon them. Here the question may be asked, why should sin that is committed in a short time be punished eternally? We must hold with Augustine that God's judgments on the wicked, occultu esse possum injusta esse non possum, may be secret, but never unjust. The reason why sin committed in a short time is eternally punished is because every sin is committed against an infinite essence, and no less than eternity of punishment can satisfy. Why is treason punished with confiscation and death? But because it is against the king's person, which is sacred. Much more, that offense which is against God's crown and dignity is of a heinous and infinite nature, and cannot be satisfied with less than eternal punishment. Use 2. Of comfort to the godly. God is eternal, therefore he lives forever to reward the godly. Romans chapter 2, verse 7. To them who seek for glory and honor, eternal life. The people of God here are in a suffering condition. Acts chapter 20, verse 23. Bonds and afflictions abide me. The wicked are clad in purple, and fare deliciously, while the godly suffer. Goats climb upon high mountains, while Christ's sheep are in the valley of slaughter. But here is the comfort. God is eternal, and he has appointed eternal recompenses for the saints. In heaven are fresh delights, sweetness without surfeit, and that which is the crown and zenith of heaven's happiness is that it is eternal. First Epistle of John chapter 3, verse 15. Were there but the least suspicion that this glory must cease, it would much eclipse, yea, embitter it, but it is eternal. What angel can span eternity? 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. An eternal weight of glory. The saints shall bathe themselves in the rivers of divine pleasure, and these rivers can never be dried up. Psalms 16, verse 2. At thy right hand are pleasures forevermore. This is the Elah, the highest strain in the apostles' rhetoric. First Epistle to Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. Ever with the Lord. There is peace without trouble, ease without pain, glory without end, ever with the Lord. Let this comfort the saints in all their troubles. Their sufferings are but short, and their reward is eternal. Eternity makes heaven to be heaven. It is the diamond in the ring. O blessed day, that shalt have no night. The sunlight of glory shall rise upon the soul and never set. O blessed spring, that shall have no autumn or fall of the leaf. The Roman emperors have 3 crowns set upon their heads, the first of iron, the second of silver, the third of gold. So the Lord sets 3 crowns on his children, grace, comfort, and glory, and this crown is eternal. First Epistle of Peter chapter 5, verse 4. Ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. The wicked have a never-dying worm, and the godly a never-fading crown. Oh, how should this be a spur to virtue! How willing should we be to work for God! Though we had nothing here, God has time enough to reward his people. The crown of eternity shall be set upon their head. Use 3. Of exhortation. Study eternity. Our thoughts should chiefly run upon eternity. We all wish for the present, something that may delight the senses. If we could have lived, as Augustine says, a coniubilis mundi, from the infancy of the world to the world's old age, what were this? What is time measured with eternity? As the earth is but a small point in the heaven, so time is, but nay, scarce a minute to eternity. And then what is this poor life which crumbles away so fast? Oh, think of eternity. Annos eternos in mente habe. Brethren, we are every day traveling to eternity, and whether we wake or sleep, we are going our journey. Some of us are upon the borders of eternity. Oh, study the shortness of life and length of eternity. More particularly, think of God's eternity and the soul's eternity. Think of God's eternity. He is the Ancient of Days, who was before all time. There is a figurative description of God in Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. The Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His white garment, wherewith he was clothed, signified his majesty, his hair like the pure wool, his holiness, and the Ancient of Days, his eternity. The thought of God's eternity should make us have high adoring thoughts of God. We are apt to have mean, irreverent thoughts of him. Psalms 50, verse 21. Thou thoughtest I was such as one as thyself, weak and mortal. But if we would think of God's eternity, when all our power ceases, he is King eternal, his crown flourishes forever, he can make us happy or miserable forever. This would make us have adoring thoughts of God. Revelations chapter 4, verse 10. The 24 elders fall down before him that sat upon the throne, and worship him that liveth for ever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne. The saints fall down to signify by that humble posture that they are not worthy to sit in God's presence. They fall down and they worship him that liveth for ever and ever. They do, as it were, kiss his feet. They cast their crowns before the throne. They lay all their honor at his feet. Therefore they show the humble adoration to the eternal essence. Study God's eternity. It will make us adore where we cannot fathom. Think of the soul's eternity. As God is eternal, so he has made us eternal. We are never dying creatures. We are shortly entering upon an eternal state, either of happiness or misery. Have serious thoughts of this. Say, O my soul, which of these two eternities is like to be thy portion? I must shortly depart hence, and whither then shall I go? To which of these eternities, either of glory or misery? The serious meditation of the eternal state we are to pass into would work strongly with us. 1. Thoughts of eternal torments are a good antidote against sin. Sin tempts with its pleasure, but when we think of eternity, it may cool the intemperate heat of lust. Shall I, for the pleasure of sin for a season, endure eternal pain? Sin, like those locusts, Revelations chapter 9, verse 7, seems to have on its head a crown like gold, but it has in it a tail like a scorpion, verse 10, and a sting in its tail, and this sting can never be plucked out. Shall I venture eternal wrath? Is sin committed so sweet as lying in hell forever is bitter? This thought would make us flee from sin as Moses from the serpent. 2. The serious thoughts of eternal happiness would very much take us off from worldly things. What are these sublunary things to eternity? They are quickly gone, they salute us, and take their farewell. But I am to enter upon an everlasting estate. I hope to live with him who is eternal. What is the world to me? To those who stand upon the top of the Alps, the great cities of Campania are small things in their eyes. So to him who has his thoughts fixed on his eternal state after this life, all these things seem as nothing in his eye. What is the glory of this world? How poor and contemptible compared with an eternal weight of glory. 3. The serious thoughts of an eternal state, either of happiness or misery, should have a powerful influence upon whatsoever we take in hand. Every work we do promises either a blessed or cursed eternity. Every good action sets up a step nearer to an eternity of happiness. Every bad action sets us a step nearer to an eternity of misery. Oh, what influence should the thoughts of eternity have upon our religious duties! It should make us do them with all our might. Duty well performed lifts a Christian higher towards heaven and sets a Christian a step nearer to a blessed eternity. 6. The unchangeableness of God. The next attribute is God's unchangeableness. I am Jehovah, I change not. Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. 1. God is unchangeable in his nature. 2. In his decree. 1. Unchangeable in his nature. 1. There is no eclipse of his brightness. 2. No period put to his being. 1. No eclipse of his brightness. His essence shines with a fixed luster, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. James chapter 1, verse 17. Thou art the same. Psalms 102, verse 27. All created things are full of vicissitudes. Princes and emperors are subject to mutation. Sesostris, an Egyptian prince, having subdued diverse kings in war, made them draw his chariot like horses, as if he intended them to eat grass, as God did King Nebuchadnezzar. The crown has many successors. Kingdoms have their eclipses and convulsions. What is become of the glory of Athens, the pomp of Troy? Jam seges et tubi Troja fuit. Now corn grows where Troy once stood. Though kingdoms have a head of gold, they have feet of clay. The heavens change. As a vesture shalt thou change them, and they shall be changed. Psalms 102, verse 26. The heavens are the most ancient records, where God has written his glory with a sunbeam. Yet these shall change. Though I do not think they shall be destroyed as to their substance, yet they shall be changed as to their qualities. They shall melt with fervent heat, and so be more refined and purified. Second Epistle of Peter, chapter 3, verse 12. Thus the heavens shall be changed, but not he who dwells in heaven. With him there is no variableness, nor shadow of turning. The best saints have their eclipses and changes. Look upon a Christian in his spiritual estate, and he is full of variation. Though the seed of grace does not die, yet its beauty and activity often wither. A Christian has his aguish fits in religion. Sometimes his faith is at a high tide, sometimes low ebb. Sometimes his love flames, at another time is like fires in the embers, and he has lost his first love. How strong was David's grace at one time! The God of my rock, in him will I trust. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 3. At another time he says, I shall one day perish by the hand of Saul. What Christian can say he does not find a change in his graces, that the bow of his faith never unbends, the strings of his viol never slacken? Surely we shall never meet with such Christians till we meet them in heaven. But God is without any shadow of turning. The angels were subject to change. They were created holy, but mutable, the angels which kept not their first estate. Jude chapter 6. These morning stars of heaven were falling stars, but God's glory shines with a fixed brightness. In God there is nothing that looks like a change, for better or worse. Not better, because he then were not perfect. Not worse, for then he would cease to be perfect. He is immutably holy, immutably good. There is no shadow of change in him. But when Christ, who is God, assumed the human nature, there was a change in God. If the divine nature had been converted into the human, or the human into the divine, there had been a change, but they were not so. The human nature was distinct from the divine. Therefore, there was no change. A cloud over the sun makes no change in the body of the sun. So, though the divine nature be covered with the human, it makes no change in the divine nature. 2. There is no period put to his being, who only has immortality. First Epistle to Timothy, chapter 6, verse 16. The Godhead cannot die. An infinite essence cannot be changed into finite, but God is infinite. He is eternal, ergo, he is not mortal. To be eternal and mortal is a contradiction. Use 1. See the excellence of the divine nature in its immutability. This is the glory of the Godhead. Mutableness denotes weakness, and is not in God, who is the same yesterday, and today, and forever. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8. Men are fickle and mutable, like Reuben, unstable as water. Genesis chapter 49, verse 4. They are changeable in their principles. If their faces altered as fast as their opinions, we should not know them. Changeable in their resolutions, as the wind that blows in the east presently turns about to the west. They resolve to be virtuous, but quickly repent of their resolutions. Their minds are like a sick man's pulse, which alters every half hour. An apostle compares them to waves of the sea and wandering stars. Jude chapter 13. They are not pillars in God's temple, but reeds. Others are changeable in their friendship. They quickly love and quickly hate. Sometimes they will put you in their bosom, then excommunicate you out of their favor. They change as the chameleon, into several colors, but God is immutable. Use 2. See the vanity of the creature. There are changes in everything but in God. Men of high degree are vanity, and men of low degree are a lie. Psalms 62, verse 9. We look for more from the creature than God has put in it. It has two evils in it. It promises more than we find, and it fails us when we most need it. There is failure in omni. A man desires to have his corn ground, and the water fails. The mariner is for a voyage, and the wind does not blow, or is contrary. One depends upon another for the payment of a promise, and he fails, and is like a foot out of joint. Who would look for a fixed stability in the vain creature? It is as if one should build houses on the sand, where the sea comes in and overflows. The creature is true to nothing but deceit, and is constant only in its disappointments. It is no more wonderful to see changes fall out here below than to see the moon dressing itself in a new shape and figure. Expect to meet with changes in everything but God. Use 3. Comfort to the godly. 1. In case of losses. If an estate he almost boiled away to nothing, if you lose friends by death, there is a double eclipse, but the comfort is, God is unchangeable. I may lose these things, but I cannot lose my God. He never dies. When the fig tree and olive tree failed, God did not fail. I will joy in the God of my salvation. Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 18. Flowers in the garden die, but a man's portion remains. So outward things die and change, but thou art the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Psalm 73, verse 26. 2. In case of sadness of spirit. God seems to cast off the soul in desertion, as in Canticles chapter 5, verse 6. My beloved had withdrawn himself, yet he is unchangeable. He is immutable in his love. He may change his countenance, but not his heart. I have loved thee with an everlasting love. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 3. Hebrew, olam, a love of eternity. If once God's electing love rises upon the soul, it never sets. The mountains shall be removed, but my loving kindness shall not depart from thee, neither the covenant of my peace be removed. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 10. God's love stands faster than the mountains. His love to Christ is unchangeable, and he will no more cease loving believers than he will cease loving Christ. Use 4. Of exhortation. Get an interest in the unchangeable God, then thou art as a rock in the sea, unmovable in the midst of all changes. How shall I get a part in the unchangeable God? By having a change wrought in thee. But ye are washed, but ye are sanctified. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 2. Whence we are changed, a tenebris ad lucem, from darkness to light, so changed as if another soul did live in the same body. By this change we are interested in the unchangeable God. Trust to that God only, who is unchangeable. Cease ye from man, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 22. Leave trusting to the reed, but trust to the Rock of Ages. He that is by faith and garrisoned in God is safe in all changes. He is like a boat that is tied to an immovable rock. He that trusts in God trusts in that which cannot fail him. He is unchangeable. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. Health may leave us, riches, friends may leave us, but, says God, I will not leave thee, my power shall support thee, my spirit shall sanctify thee, my mercy shall save thee, I will never leave thee. O trust in this unchangeable God. God is jealous of two things, of our love and of our trust. He is jealous of our love, lest we love the creature more than him. Therefore he makes it prove bitter, and of our trust, lest we should place more confidence in it than in him. Therefore he makes it prove unfaithful. Outward comforts are given us as food by the way to refresh us, not as crutches to lean on. If we make the creature an idol, what we make our trust, God will make our shame. O trust in the immortal God. Like Noah's dove, we have no footing for our souls till we get into the ark of God's unchangeableness. Psalms 125, verse 1. They that trust in the Lord shall be like Mount Sion, which cannot be removed. God is unchangeable in his decree. What he has decreed from eternity is unalterable. My counsel shall stand. Isaiah chapter 46, verse 10. God's eternal counsel or decree is immutable. If he changed his decree, it must be from some defective wisdom or foresight, for that is the reason why men change their purposes. They see something after which they did not see before. But this cannot be the cause why God should alter his decree, because his knowledge is perfect. He sees all things in one entire prospect before him. But is not God said to repent? There seems to be a change in his decree in Jonah chapter 3, verse 10. The Lord repented of the evil that he said he would do unto them. Repentance is attributed to God figuratively. Numbers chapter 23, verse 19. He is not a man that he should repent. There may be a change in God's work, but not in his will. He may will a change, but not change his will. God may change his sentence, but not his decree. A king may cause sentence to be passed upon a malefactor whom he intends to save. So God threatened destruction to Nineveh, but the people of Nineveh, repenting, God spared them. Jonah chapter 3, verse 10. Here God changed his sentence, but not his decree. It was what had lain in the womb of his purpose from eternity. But if God's decree were unchangeable and cannot be reversed, to what purpose should we use the means? Our endeavors toward salvation cannot alter his decree. The decree of God does not affect my endeavor. For he that decreed my salvation decreed it in the use of means, and if I neglect the means, I reprobate myself. No man argues thus: God has decreed how long I shall live, therefore I will not use means to preserve my life. I will not eat and drink. God has decreed the time of my life in the use of means, so God has decreed my salvation in the use of the word and of prayer. As a man who refuses food murders himself, so he that refuses to work out his salvation destroys himself. The vessels of mercy are said to be prepared unto glory. Romans chapter 9, verse 23. How are they prepared but by being sanctified? And that cannot be but in the use of means. Therefore let not God's decree take thee off from holy endeavors. It is a good saying of Dr. Preston, "Hast thou a heart to pray to God? It is a sign no decree of wrath has passed against thee." Use 1. If God's decree be eternal and unchangeable, then God does not elect upon our faith foreseen, as the Arminians maintain. The children being not yet born, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, it was said, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. Romans chapter 9, verses 11 and 13. We are not elected for holiness, but to holiness. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4. If we are not justified for our faith, much less are we elected for our faith. But we are not justified for it. We are said to be justified through faith, as an instrument in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, but not for faith as a cause, and if not justified for faith, then much less elected. God's decree of election is eternal and unchangeable, and therefore depends not upon faith foreseen. As many as were ordained to eternal life believed. Acts chapter 13, verse 48. They were not elected because they believed, but they believed because they were elected. Use 2. If God's decree be unchangeable, it gives comfort in 2 cases. 1. Concerning God's providence toward his church. We are ready to quarrel with providence if everything does not accord with our desire. Remember, God's work goes on, and nothing falls out but what he has decreed from eternity. 2. God has decreed troubles for the church's good. The troubles of God's church is like the angels troubling the water, which made way for healing his people. John chapter 5, verse 4. He has decreed troubles in the church. His fire is in Zion and his furnace in Jerusalem. Isaiah chapter 31, verse 9. The wheels in a watch move across one to another, but they all carry on the motion of the watch. So the wheels of providence often move cross to our desires, but still they carry on God's unchangeable decree. Many shall be made white. Daniel chapter 12, verse 10. God lets the waters of affliction be poured on his people to make them white. Therefore murmur not at God's dealings. His work goes on, nothing falls out but what he has wisely decreed from eternity. Everything shall promote God's design and fulfill his decree. Use 3. Comfort to the godly in regard of their salvation. 2 Epistle to Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. The foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. God's counsel of election is unchangeable. Once elected, forever elected. I will not blot his name out of the book of life. Revelations chapter 3, verse 5. The book of God's decree has no errata in it, no blottings out. Once justified, never unjustified. Repentance shall be hid from mine eyes. Hosea chapter 13, verse 14. God never repents of his electing love. He loved them to the end. John chapter 13, verse 1. Therefore, if thou art a believer, comfort thyself with this, the immutability of God's decree. Use 4. To conclude with a word to the wicked, who march furiously against God and his people, let them know that God's decree is unchangeable. God will not alter it, nor can they break it, and while they resist God's will, they fulfill it. There is a twofold will of God, voluntas praecepti et decreti, the will of God's precept and of his decree. While the wicked resist the will of God's precept, they fulfill the will of his permissive decree. Judas betrays Christ, Pilate condemns him, the soldiers crucify him. While they resist the will of God's precepts, they fulfill the will of his permissive decree. Acts chapter 4, verse 28. God commands one thing, they do the contrary. To keep the Sabbath, and they profane it. While they disobey his command, they fulfill his permissive decree. If a man sets up two nets, one of silk, the other of iron, the silken net may be broken, not the iron. So while men break the silken net of God's command, they are taken in the iron net of his decree. While they sit backward to God's precepts, they row forward to his decrees to permit their sin, and to punish them for their sin permitted. 7. The wisdom of God. The next attribute is God's wisdom, which is one of the brightest beams of the Godhead. He is wise in heart. Job chapter 9, verse 4. The heart is the seat of wisdom. Cor, in Hebreo, sumitor pro judicio. Pineda. Among the Hebrews, the heart is put for wisdom. Let men of understanding tell me, Job chapter 34, verse 34, in the Hebrew, let men of heart tell me. God is wise in heart, that is, he is most wise. God only is wise. He solely and wholly possesses all wisdom. Therefore, he is called the only wise God. First Epistle to Timothy chapter 1, verse 17. All the treasures of wisdom are locked up in him, and no creature can have any wisdom but as God is pleased to give it out of his treasury. God is perfectly wise. There is no defect in his wisdom. Men may be wise in some things, but in other things may betray imprudence and weakness. But God is the exemplar and pattern of wisdom, and the pattern must be perfect. Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. God's wisdom appears in two things. 1. His infinite intelligence. 2. His exact working. 1. His infinite intelligence. He knows the most profound secrets. Daniel chapter 2, verse 28. He knows the thoughts which are the most intricate subtle things. Amos chapter 4, verse 13. He declareth to man what is his thought. Let sin be contrived ever so politically, God will pull off all masks and disguises and make a heart anatomy. He knows all future contingencies, et ante intuita, and already foreseen. All things are before him in one clear prospect. 2. His exact curious working. He is wise in heart. His wisdom lies in his works. These works of God are bound up in 3 great volumes, where we may read his wisdom. 1. The work of creation. The creation is both a monument of God's power and a looking-glass in which we may see his wisdom. None but a wise God could so curiously contrive the world. Behold the earth decked with variety of flowers, which are both for beauty and fragrance. Behold the heaven bespangled with lights. We may see the glorious wisdom of God blazing in the sun, twinkling in the stars. His wisdom is seen in marshalling and ordering everything in its proper place and sphere. If the sun had been set lower, it would have burnt us. If higher, it would not have warmed us with its beams. God's wisdom is seen in appointing the seasons of the year. Thou hast made summer and winter. Psalms 74, verse 17. If it had been all summer, the heat would have scorched us. If all winter, the cold would have killed us. The wisdom of God is seen in checkering the dark and the light. If it had been all night, there had been no labor. If all day, there had been no rest. Wisdom is seen in mixing the elements, as the earth with the sea. If it had been all sea, we had wanted bread. If it had been all earth, we had wanted water. The wisdom of God is seen in preparing and ripening the fruits of the earth, in the wind and frost that prepare the fruits, and in the sun and rain that ripen the fruits. God's wisdom is seen in setting bounds to the sea, so that wisely contriving it, that though the sea be higher than many parts of the earth, yet it should not overflow the earth, so that we may cry out with the psalmist, O Lord, how manifold are thy works! In wisdom hast thou made them all. Psalms 104, verse 24. There is nothing to be seen but miracles of wisdom. God's wisdom is seen in ordering things in the body politic, that one shall have need of another. The poor need the rich man's money, and the rich need the poor man's labor. God makes one trade upon another, that one may be helpful to another, and that mutual love may be preserved. 2. The second work wherein God's wisdom shines forth is the work of redemption. 1. Here was the masterpiece of divine wisdom, to contrive a way to happiness between the sin of man and the justice of God. We may cry out with the apostle, O the depth of the riches both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. Romans chapter 11, verse 33. This astonished men and angels. If God had put us to find out a way of salvation when we were lost, we could neither have had a head to devise, nor a heart to desire, what God's infinite wisdom had found out for us. Mercy had a mind to save sinners, and was loath that the justice of God should be wronged. It is a pity, says Mercy, that such a noble creature as man should be made to be undone, and yet God's justice must not be a loser. What way, then, shall be found out? Angels cannot satisfy for the wrong done to God's justice, nor is it fit that one nature should sin and another nature suffer. What then? Shall man be forever lost? Now, while mercy was thus debating with itself what to do for the recovery of fallen man, the wisdom of God stepped in, and thus the oracle spake. Let God become man, let the second person in the Trinity be incarnate, and suffer, and so for fitness he shall be man, and for ability he shall be God. Thus justice may be satisfied and man saved. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom of God, thus to make justice and mercy to kiss each other. Great is this mystery, God manifest in the flesh. First Epistle to Timothy, chapter 3, verse 16. What wisdom was this, that Christ should be made sin, yet know no sin, that God should condemn the sin, yet save the sinner. Here was the wisdom to find out the way of salvation. 2. The means by which salvation is applied sets forth God's wisdom, that salvation should be by faith, not by works. Faith is a humble grace. It gives all to Christ. It is an adorer of free grace, and free grace being advanced here, God has His glory, and it is His highest wisdom to exalt His own glory. 3. The way of working faith declares God's wisdom. It is wrought by the word preached. Faith comes by hearing. Romans chapter 10, verse 17. What is the weak breath of a man to convert a soul? It is like whispering in the ears of a dead man. This is foolishness in the eye of the world. But the Lord loves to show His wisdom by that which seems folly. He has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. Why so? Verse 29. That no flesh should glory in His presence. Should God convert by the ministry of angels, then we should be ready to glory in angels, and give that honor to them which is due to God. But when God works by weak tools, makes use of men who are of like passions with ourselves, and by them converts, then the power is plainly seen to be of God. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. Herein is God's wisdom seen, that no flesh may glory in his presence. 3. The wisdom of God wonderfully appears in the works of his providence. Every providence has a mercy or a wonder wrapped up in it. The wisdom of God in his works of providence appears, 1. By effecting great things by small contemptible means. He cured the stung Israelites by a brazen serpent. If some sovereign antidote had been used, if the balm of Gilead had been brought, there had been some likelihood of a cure. But what was there in a brazen serpent? It was a mere image, and not applied to him that was wounded. He was to look upon it only, yet this wrought a cure. The less probability in the instrument, the more is God's wisdom seen. 2. The wisdom of God is seen in doing his work by which, to the eye of flesh, seems quite contrary. God intended to advance Joseph, and to make all his brethren sheaves bow to his sheaf. Now, what way does he take? First, Joseph is thrown into the pit, then sold into Egypt, then after that put in prison. Genesis chapter 39, verse 20. By his imprisonment, God made way for his advancement. For God to save in an ordinary way would not so much display his wisdom, but when he goes strangely to work and saves in that very way in which we think he will destroy, his wisdom shines forth in a most conspicuous manner. God would make Israel victorious, and what way does he take? He lessens Gideon's army. The people that are with thee are too many. Jude chapter 7, verse 2. He reduces the army of 30,000 to 300, and by taking away the means of victory, makes Israel victorious. God had a design to bring his people out of Egypt, and a strange course he takes to effect it. He stirred up the hearts of the Egyptians to hate them. He turned their heart to hate his people. Psalms 105, verse 25. The more they hated and oppressed Israel, the more God plagued the Egyptians, and the more glad they were to let Israel go. Exodus chapter 12, verse 33. The Egyptians were urgent upon Israel, that they might send them out of the land in haste. God had a mind to save Jonah when he was cast into the sea, and he let the fish swallow him up, and so brought him to the shore. God would save Paul, and all that were in the ship with him, but the ship must break, and they all come safe to land upon the broken pieces of the ship. Acts chapter 27, verse 44. In reference to the church, God often goes by contrary means, and makes the enemy do his work. He can make a straight stroke with a crooked stick. He has often made his church grow and flourish by persecution. The showers of blood have made her more faithful, says Julian. Exodus chapter 1, verse 10. Come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And the way they took to suppress them made them multiply. Verse 12. The more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied. Like ground, the more it is harrowed, the better crop it bears. The apostles were scattered by reasons of persecution, and their scattering was like the scattering of seed. They went up and down and preached the gospel, and brought daily converts. Paul was put in prison, and his bonds were the means of spreading the gospel. Philippians chapter 1, verse 12. 3. The wisdom of God is seen in making the most desperate evils turn to the good of his children. As several poisonable ingredients, wisely tempered by the skill of the artist, make a sovereign medicine, so God makes the most deadly afflictions cooperate for the good of his children. He purifies them and prepares them for heaven. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. These hard frosts hasten the spring flowers of glory. The wise God, by a divine chemistry, turns afflictions into cordials. He makes his people gainers by losses, and turns their crosses into blessings. 4. The wisdom of God is seen in this, that the sins of men shall carry on God's work, yet he should have no hand in their sin. The Lord permits sin, but does not approve it. He has a hand in the action in which sin is, but not in the sin of the action. As in the crucifying of Christ, so far as it was a natural action, God concurred. If he had not given the Jews life and breath, they could not have done it, but as it was a sinful action, so God abhorred it. A musician plays upon a viol out of tune. The musician is the cause of the sound, but the jarring and discord is from the viol itself. So men's natural motion is from God, but their sinful motion is from themselves. When a man rides on a lame horse, his riding is the cause why the horse goes, but the lameness is from the horse itself. Herein is God's wisdom, that the sins of men carry on his work, yet he has no hand in them. 5. The wisdom of God is seen in helping in desperate cases. God loves to show his wisdom when human help and wisdom fail. Exquisite lawyers love to wrestle with niceties and difficulties in the law, to show their skill the more. God's wisdom is never at a loss, but when providences are darkest, then the morning star of deliverance appears. Who remembered us in our low estate. Psalms 136, verse 23. Sometimes God melts away the spirits of his enemies. Joshua chapter 2, verse 24. Sometimes he finds them other work to do, and sounds a retreat to them, as he did to Saul when he was pursuing David. The Philistines are in the land. In the mount will God be seen. When the church seems to be upon the altar, her peace and liberty ready to be sacrificed, then the angel comes. 6. God's wisdom is seen in befooling wise men, and in making their wisdom the means of their overthrow. Ahithophel had deep policy. 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 23. The counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God, but he consulted his own shame. The Lord turned his counsel into foolishness. 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 31. God taketh the wise in their own craftiness. Job chapter 5, verse 13. That is, when they think to deal wisely, he not only disappoints them, but ensnares them. The snares they lay for others catch themselves. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. Psalms 9, verse 15. God loves to counterplot politicians. He makes use of their own wit to undo them, and hangs Haman upon his own gallows. Use 1. Adore the wisdom of God. It is an infinite deep. The angels cannot search into it. His ways are past finding out. Romans chapter 11, verse 33. As we should adore, so we should rest in the wisdom of God. God sees what condition is best for us. Did we believe the wisdom of God, it would keep us from murmuring. Rest in God's wisdom. 1. In want of spiritual comfort. God is wise. He sees it good sometimes that we should be without comfort. Perhaps we should be lifted up with spiritual enlargements, as Paul with his revelations. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. It is hard to have the heart low when comfort is high. God sees humility to be better for us than joy. It is better to want comfort and be humble than to have it and be proud. 2. In want of bodily strength, rest in God's wisdom. He sees what is best. Perhaps the less health, the more grace. Weaker in body, the stronger in faith. Though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16. At Rome there were 2 laurel trees. When the one withered, the other flourished. The inward man is renewed. When God shakes the tree of the body, he is gathering the fruits of righteousness. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. Sickness is God's lance, to let out the imposthume of sin. Isaiah chapter 27, verse 9. 3. In case of God's providences to his church. When we wonder what God is doing with us, and are ready to kill ourselves with care, let us rest in God's wisdom. He knows best what he has to do. His footsteps are not known. Psalm 77, verse 19. Trust him where you cannot trace him. God is most in his way when we think he is most out of the way. When we think God's church is, as it were, in the grave, and there is a tombstone laid upon her, his wisdom can roll away the stone from the sepulchre,